and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of her advocacy is being passionate for autistic young adults and their families as an occupational therapist. No other than Miss April Ratchford.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss April. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
I am an autistic occupational therapist and mom myself to an autistic young adult who just got himself off to Marshall University, first week of school this week. So he is living on his own in his own apartment off campus. So it can be done. He's 23. It's a little, it's never too late to get them off on their own. So a little bumpy ride, but it can be done.
Yes, it's never too late. And Miss April Rochford, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about your advocacy, supporting young autistic adults. Why is it the transition from child focused services to adult supports often described as falling off a cliff? What are the most critical gaps our families face?
It's the lack of funding and supports after they leave high school or their preparation into adulthood. I think what happens is that everyone thinks that autism ends at 18 or 21 and then they're off and running, and that's not what happens. They're still going to be behind their peers and they still need those supports, and they may need those supports until well into their mid 20s, and it's okay. And I don't think people tell families this, that it's okay that they stay home for a little bit longer, and it's perfectly normal. I didn't pull it together until I was 30, and I
Yes.
wasn't diagnosed until I was in my adulthood, so it made sense. So if there are parents out there, they think they are failing, you're not. I failed college 5 times before I pulled it together. So,
So, Miss April, how do the support needs of young autistic adults beyond just losing school based services?
so what families think is that speech and OT in like high school, and you can actually transition those services to adulthood before they turn 21. Now, if you harness it right and get those services before they turn 21, because after 21 it's harder to get those services, you can use speech for executive functioning skills so they can do the things that they need to do, like bills and money and shopping. And for the OT side, OTs can take them out into the community and help them with the ADLs or driving skills, should they want to do that, or navigate the community on public transit, or learning to do laundry in public and such things so that they can live on their own. And OTs are trained to go into public spaces and see what areas are safe, what areas are not safe, and things that you may miss. Like, I used to do home visits, not in like um, for young adults, but for older adults, I can go into the home, see what they do in their homes, what's considered safe, what's considered not safe, and do modifications. and say, hey, you may need this in your home in order to be independent. And we can do the same thing for young adults.
Miss April, caring often extend long term. What unique stressors do families experience during this transition, and how does the current system fail to support them?
So, what tends to happen is that once they leave school, parents tend to be in the oh shit, they're not ready. And that's where the ball drops because then you're stuck running around on your own trying to figure out what's my kid going to do. Because what happens if your kid isn't ready to be out on their own? You're going to have to figure out, can they get a job? Do they want to get a job? Is college really for them? Where are they now? Where do they need to be? How do you get these services? What services do you have to pay for? What services are currently being paid for by insurance and other things that are in your community? And every state and country are different. So, what happens in my state of Kentucky may be completely different somewhere else, where like the systems here, because we are such a rural community everywhere in Kentucky, the funding is lacking. So, there's not a lot of funding for autistic young adults, and there's not a lot of things for them to do in the community. So, a lot of them tend to self isolate and not socialize. There's not a lot of things for them to do if they're not in college. So, how are they going to get the socialization skills they need to go on a job interview? Because it is difficult to go on a job interview if you don't get a socialization skills. And we still live in an archaic society where we don't even give out the questions for a job interview. You We don't do well with pop-up questions. It's very difficult when you pop a question to somebody who's autistic and you want them to describe a situation they've never been in and they don't get the question beforehand. So it makes getting a job even difficult, even a
Yes,
regular job at Kroger.
definitely. And how do factors like race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status, gender identity, and co occurring conditions compound the difficulties faced during these transitions?
It is even worse because not only that, that just throws a whole new layer on top of that because then it's like services go far beyond what parents are just stuck. They're just stuck because they don't have the means or the money. And so what tends to happen is you have stressors on the system, which is usually government based. And right now, funding here in Kentucky is already stressed to the max. We're at our capacity. And they're stuck in a loophole. They're stuck in nowhere land and they fall through the hole. They fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
And unless parents know where to go, they're they end up being one of the statistics of 80% being unemployed and stuck on SSI that is not going to do anything for them at all when they're so gifted and capable of doing so much more.
Miss April, how can support system better balance ensuring safety well-being with respecting autistic young adults' autonomy as well as communication style and the right to make decisions about their own life.
The question, just ask them the question. Just what do you need? How can I help you be autonomous? They can tell you. They can tell you exactly what they need. It's just not judging them for it. Like, and it's not an easy question to it's not an easy problem to solve because there's so many components to it, and it's going to take a long time to implement so many programs into place to make it inclusive for not only autistic people or neurodivergent people, but everyone in general, just so everyone feels included. But we got to start somewhere with the conversation of just asking the question, what do you need so you can be successful and independent?
Successful and independent indeed. What are the biggest barriers to securing and maintaining truly meaningful integrated enjoyment for young autistic adult, and what support models actually work?
A lot of the times, the barriers tend to be not continuing the supports after they leave high school simply because they're adults don't mean they don't need those supports still in place. And what typically happens is, for whatever reason, just because they're adults doesn't mean they still don't need those supports in place. 9 times out of 10, they're still 30% behind their typical peers. And even neurotypical peers, the human brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. So that means if your neurotypical kids aren't fully developed till 25, by the time they hit 30, our neurodivergent kids are probably 30, which I was, before they really fully get that maturity level and understand. Like I said, my son first went to college at 19 and probably had the maturity level of probably a 15-year-old, crashed and burned. So here he is 4 years later at 23 and can now navigate a college campus without melting down. And let me tell you, he had a rough go. Like, it was a rough start for him this week, having to live off campus because there wasn't enough dorms. And then on top of that, there was a roommate that didn't pay his rent and tried to break into his apartment. And he had to deal with that and then get, you know, student accessibility on his own. He's doing this on his own without having me to do it for him. He's navigating all these stressors on his own. If he did this at 19, he would have melted down, missed class, crash burn. But he's doing it, hadn't missed a class. And he's like, Mom, it's been a shitty week and I'm tired, but I'm gonna keep going. He had the option to move into a dorm. And he's like, nah, I'm good. I'll just stick it out in this apartment. So it does happen. The change does happen, but you got to give them a shot to get to that point.
Miss April, as one of your great advocacy to help the autistic people, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Long term goal, um, hopefully, I can start a foundation is my long term goal that um, the foundation would kick in for young adults 18 to 30 and it would support anything that they would need, whether it be coaching, mentoring, college, etc., without a monetary limit, because there is no funding for those age groups. You see a lot of funding for 18 and under, or those that are in college or transition programs, but you don't see enough funding for them for housing, for mentoring, for coaching, for mental health. So that's my long term goal. Short term goal, be able to do my podcast full time and still bring on guests so families have a voice. Young
A
adults
voice.
have a voice. Be that voice of empowerment that you are not alone. They deserve a voice. And
Definitely. And good luck to your goals, Miss April, and looking forward for more success.
thank
And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
to be like me. Besides a wing and a prayer, keep going. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. Just because you don't do it like anyone else doesn't mean it's wrong. Someone told me I was never going to be a podcaster. Get out of
Mm.
here. If you told me I was going to be podcasting when I was 18, I would have laughed in your face. If you told me I was going to be an occupational therapist, I would have laughed in your face too. This is my second career. My first career was a licensed practical nurse for 10 years. And I turned around and got my master's degree in occupational therapy for my son to be his advocate. So it can be done. And I'm going back to school to get my master's in neuroscience so I can get my PhD at King's College of London. So wish me luck.
Well, wish you all the best, Miss April, and looking forward for more success. And thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Um, I would recommend the Neurodiversity Playbook from Dr. Matthew Zerinsky. This is a good one for young adults. Just simply, it's an easy read and it teaches like code switching. He works with a lot of neurodiverse young adults or his clients, and he's a funny guy. It was an easy read. My son enjoyed reading it, and he hits a lot of the points that a lot of autistic young adults run into. Another one is The Autistic Guide to Self Discovery. Discovery by Saul Smith. He is a professor who discovered he was autistic in his adult life, and his students figured he, he got famous off TikTok. So he is one that he does coaching as well, and he makes it fun and enjoyable, especially if you were late diagnosed as an autistic. And it's hard because it's like for a lot of people who are late diagnosed, especially if you have kids that are autistic and you figured out you're autistic, you're some people are it it's like a punch in the face because now you feel vindicated and you have a chip on your shoulder. So those are the two books I would recommend reading.
Thank you for that recommended books, Miss April. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my Book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. And Geography 101 in its first season, fourth season, I should say, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in fourth season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss April, if you could ask every member of our community to take one concrete action to better support young autistic adults transitioning to adulthood, what would it be?
Support any small community um, autistic outreach that you can, not the big ones. The big ones don't need the money. Support the small ones. They're the ones that need your help. And if you see a parent struggling, just reach out because they're not going to reach out to you. Reach out to them first.
Reach people, reach them out, and help them. Miss April, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy?
Sure. Like, I'm on all platforms just like you are. Go to my link tree, Adulting with Autism.
Yes. What's the name of your podcast, Miss April?
My podcast is Adulting with Autism, and I'm on all platforms as well as YouTube.
Yes, people, let's support Miss April Ratchford, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come, more and more empowering episode of the podcast itself. So, Miss April, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.